when I reflect on my career, there have been some incredible leaders that I've gotten to work with. We had a podcast, Barry Salzberg, which was, quite frankly, one of my favorite conversations. And, in my early days, so back in the 90s, there were a few leaders that really stood out. And one of them, who we're going to be talking today, is Frank Tirelli. And I remember being at a training in the mid-90s when I first saw Frank. And I got to tell you, my first reaction is, who is this guy? He does not fit the stereotypical view of what a partner at Deloitte or a professional services firm is, no less the actual partner leading the entire Western region. And it really didn't take me a long time to learn why he was not only a partner, but a transformational leader. Frank had really a unique way to inspire people. He was unbelievably innovative. I still remember some of the things that he did. And I think he also was able to get stuff done and move things ahead like few could. While my memories were born in the 90s at Deloitte, today's conversation is not really going to be about Deloitte. It really starts with Frank leaving the safety of Deloitte and becoming the COO of myCFO, a company that was started by the legendary James Clark, founder of both Netscape and Silicon Graphics. It then takes us to his time as the CEO of Herbalife, a company that has absolutely seen some challenges over the years, and then back to Deloitte, but not Deloitte US, but to Deloitte Italy, where he was the CEO. The tagline, I say this over and over, so hopefully it's resonated with everybody, but the tagline for Resilient is crisis, risk, and disruption. And when I step back and really think about Frank, he is literally the embodiment of what it takes to lead through crisis, risk, and disruption. And I'm personally really excited to hear his stories and lessons learned that he has to share over his incredible career.
The activity that you're going to succeed in is determined by you. Not your spouse, not your children, not your parent, not your pastor, not your rabbi, not your partner in charge. You make the decision in what activities you're going to be successful. And society doesn't define what success is. You do.
Welcome to Resilient, where we hear stories from leaders on risk, crisis, and disruption. And we get those stories by jumping in a plane and meeting our guests on their home turf. My name is Mike Kearney, a partner in Deloitte's strategic risk practice. And in addition to my day job, I've got this incredible opportunity where I personally get to think of all these questions and ask them with these incredible leaders who really define what it is to be resilient. And, I've been blown away by the continued engagement that I'm getting online through social media. And, just this week, I got so many of you reaching out to me, providing recommendations for future guests. Thank you for that. I'm always looking for guests. But then also how these interviews have helped you in your career. And I'll tell you, that personally inspires me to do more, because when I'm seeing that these interviews and these conversations are making an impact in your lives, it means I'm going to double down. So thank you for that. Today, I am in beautiful San Diego. It's our second time in San Diego. Believe it or not, our first podcast with Bill Roper was down here in San Diego. So I'm reminiscing not only about how beautiful this place is, but the very first podcast we did was here. So it's fantastic. But I am super excited to talk to Frank. You're going to hear some great stories, practical insights, and some life lessons. So without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Frank. Frank, when I think about you, I obviously had the opportunity from afar, which you probably didn't even know me when I was at Deloitte when you were here. But I remember looking at you in a sea of other leaders. It was at a training somewhere in Southern California. It was probably 1998. And I was like, man, that is not your typical Deloitte partner. You had a ponytail. I think you even said you kind of look like a bouncer. You work out. Health and wellness is important to you. And we're just very different. And some words that I think about, when I just saw you from afar and just kind of getting to know you over the last few months, is kind of authentic, confident, and an original. And I'd love for you just to weigh in. When you think about words that describe who you are, what would be some of those words? Do you agree with the ones that I used?
I've never really tried to classify myself with any particular words. I've always spent my life doing things that I love. And I don't do them to please other people. If they please other people, that's great.
Right.
I learned very early, if you do things to please other people and it's not pleasing to you, and that other person is not pleased, you've wasted your time.
Right.
Okay. So first and foremost, you have to please yourself. So at least one person is going to be pleased with whatever activity you're doing. And that's always been how I've conducted my life. So if people think I'm confident, I've always tried to be fair. I've always tried to be transparent. And whenever I dealt with someone, whether it was in the Deloitte environment or just from a personal perspective, I've always tried to have the other person's best interest at heart. And that last one, fair and transparent, I think most people can accomplish. The last one, when you're really trying to look out for the other person's best interest, it's very difficult to do, especially in a professional services environment, because you are dependent on people to be successful.
Right.
And when someone comes to you with a great opportunity and you know intuitively that that's best for them, but if they leave, you working on a deadline on one of your best clients, it's difficult to give the right recommendation to that individual.
I totally agree. The one thing I would say, and this is my hypothesis so you could respond to it, I do think a lot of people sometimes in this profession do struggle with being authentic to who they truly are. Agree or disagree?
I think in any profession, yes. Yeah, but this one too. I mean, Deloitte's a very big organization, and I love Deloitte.
Yep.
Okay, Deloitte's been the third biggest influence in my life, and I don't say that without the consequences. I have a debt to Deloitte that can never be repaid. Okay, now the debt I have to Deloitte is nowhere near as big as the debt I have to the two biggest influences in my life, but Deloitte's a very big organization, and in order to succeed in organizations like that, there's a certain amount of politics that's needed. And some people sometimes default to not being authentic for the sake of politics.
Did you recognize that people perceived you as being a little bit different?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think it helped you in your career while you were at Deloitte? And we're going to get into all of your great stories.
That's a great question. I don't know if I want to answer it. I think it did, just for the simple reason that people would be aware of someone who looked a little different. I grew up in New York City. I've got the thick New York accent. Some people would say maybe I don't fit the physical mold of what a consultant or accountant would look like. So from that perspective, you stand out a little. But you take a risk when you stand out. When you stand out, sometimes people are trying to get you. All right, so you better perform at a high level. That doesn't mean that you have to be more intelligent or more talented. You just have to be performing at a very high level. And the way I performed at a high level is I worked really hard and I worked really long. Right. I wasn't as smart, wasn't as intelligent, and I wasn't as talented as a lot of the people I worked with at Deloitte. And as you know, Deloitte's got some of the most intelligent, people. Yep. Talented people, as do the other firms. I'm not a complete Deloitte file, but I wanted to make sure I didn't fail. And it was very important for me when somebody gave me a job that I did that job and I did it well and I didn't disappoint them.
So you said that one of the things I really enjoyed in our pre-meeting was learning a bit about kind of what made Frank, and I think it goes back to your time in New York. So can you just maybe talk a few minutes about your upbringing, your childhood,
Sure.
Where you went to school? Love to hear that.
Okay. Grew up in New York City, as my accent would indicate. Went to high school, a private school on 16th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue in New York City, a school called Xavier. I refer to it as the best high school in New York City. There may be some who would argue, but I would think that they were wrong. Xavier was the second most influential institution of my life. Deloitte was third, Xavier was second, and I have a debt to Xavier that also will never be paid off, although they are very aggressive in pursuing my payment of that debt now as I've gotten older.
I'm sure they are. Yeah.
Now, Xavier has a special meaning to me, but also a special meaning to my family. My dad was an Italian immigrant, and my father also went to Xavier. So I am a second generation Xavier graduate. And my dad was probably the most important influence on my life. I mean, my mother was also, but I was raised in an Italian family, and
Right.
it was more of the I always wanted to be like my father. I wanted some of the attributes my mother had, but I obviously didn't want to be my mother. I wanted to be my father because I'm male.
So tell us about your dad. I know that,
Sure.
that he really had a big impact. So maybe share.
Yeah,
some of that.
I tell people the first book I ever read, I was about 3 years old, was my father's high school yearbook. He graduated from Xavier in 1945. And I knew, when I was 3 or 4 years old, I knew every single one of his classmates. I could tell you who captains of the football team were. Now, my father was one of the captains of the football team, so that's why.
Yeah.
But I
So you
also
knew
know
that.
who the other captain was. The captain of the basketball team was a gentleman by the name of George Hans Cafton. And you won't know the name Cafton, but Cafton was the captain and the most valuable player for Holy Cross when they won the NC2A basketball championship
cool.
in 1947.
Yeah.
So I knew everybody in that yearbook, and Xavier was a very special place to my father because they tutored him for about 2 to 3 years before he entered high school in English, because he came over from Italy and his language skills were Italian.
How old was he when he came over?
About
from
10.
Italy? About 10. Yeah.
When he was 13, he was admitted to Xavier. When he was 17, he was fluent in English, no accent, unless someone is presumptuous enough to say someone from New York has an accent. He was captain of the football team, and he was awarded a scholarship to some schlock university in South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame, where he graduated in 1950. Then he started his family, and I was the first.
And maybe I think I remember you telling me that when your dad came over and went to high school, wasn't he one of the only kids in your neighborhood that actually even graduated from high school? Is that, my memory serving me correctly?
What was interesting is that the joke in the neighborhood wasn't that my father was the only man in the neighborhood with a college education. He was the only guy in the neighborhood with a high school education. And that's not odd. It was a very blue-collar neighborhood. It was heavily Italian. And a lot of hardworking blue-collar guys like my grandfather in the construction business, waiters, electricians, dock workers, all of whom worked extremely hard to educate the next generation. I tell people this, and this is very important to me, and I think it's very important for a lot of folks to understand. My parents, my mother and my father, would have lived in a cardboard box to get me educated. That's how important education was to them.
Wow, that's incredible. When you reflect on your dad and even your mom for that matter,
both.
What were some of the values that they instilled in you, at an early age?
I don't see them as instilling values. I looked at them as examples. I saw the way they treated people. My father was, as I mentioned, college education from arguably one of the best colleges in the U.S., Notre Dame. Now,
Yep.
Those friends of mine who went to Notre Dame, I would never admit that to them, but it clearly is one of the best schools. And, my father came back and lived in the old neighborhood in New York City, worked in the construction business, and obviously, with the college education, was at a pretty high level. And I could see that the way the people that worked with him treated him, how he treated them, they were all equals. He had to make decisions on who to hire and who to fire, and I saw the way he treated people doing that. I think he was always empathetic. I remember him always telling me that you don't fire somebody, it hurts. It's someone who's got to take care of a family, and those things were very important to him. And I remember, if we went out to eat in the neighborhood, how well the waiters would treat him. It's just something I just never forgot. How well he treated people and how well people treated him.
Well, it's interesting because you just gave several, I think, real-life examples of what you observed. That almost seems like, and we'll get into it, but really has impacted the way that you treat people, the way that you engage from a leadership perspective.
Yeah,
So,
I certainly tried to. Yes, I certainly tried to.
other than your dad, any heroes when you were a kid?
Yeah, I didn't have heroes. I was I was very sports oriented, and there were probably two athletes that I don't want to say affected my life, but were important in my life. One was a baseball player. Name was Mickey Mantle.
Yep, I've heard of that guy.
Okay, and the other was a boxer. His name was Floyd Patterson.
Yep.
You know who Floyd Patterson is?
I definitely know the name.
Okay. Floyd Patterson was the heavyweight champion from 1956 till about 1962 when he lost his title to Sonny Liston. And there were a lot of reasons why I looked up to Floyd Patterson. One was he was an incredibly gracious man. And I heard him say something once that has stuck with me for the rest of my life. And somebody, here he was, he's the heavyweight champion of the world. You know, it's the baddest man on the planet,
Right.
as Mike Tyson
Don't
would
mess
say.
with this guy.
Yeah,
Right.
baddest man on the planet. And somebody asked him if he was scared before he went into the ring. And he goes, of course I'm scared. He goes, I'm really scared before I go in the ring. And the person who asked him the question didn't understand it, nor did I. I mean, I'm thinking, look at this guy. He's the heavyweight champion of the world, and he's scared. Why would you be scared? And he said, scared is a good thing. He goes, because if you're scared, he goes, all your senses are working. He goes, what you do is you take that scare that you have in your system and you internalize it, and you use it to your benefit. He goes, think of a situation where a woman gets into a car accident and her son is trapped under a car. She's scared, but what she does is she harnesses that feeling and she does something she could never do.
Right.
She lifts up a car. Okay, that's what I do. When I'm not scared, my senses aren't working right. I know I'm in trouble if I'm not scared.
Wasn't there a dash of, I love kind of the juxtaposition between humility and confidence. I almost wonder if that was kind of his MO as well, and that he was humble, but I'm guessing he was probably confident too at the same time.
Well, you would think if you're the heavyweight champion of the world, you have a certain amount of confidence. But I just never forgot that. And
Yeah.
you know, everybody gets scared in a certain situation. Okay, it's how you react after you're scared that differentiates you. Everyone's scared. If you're not scared, that means something is wrong with your system, because the way the system is made for humans is that when something dangerous happens, you're supposed to get scared.
Absolutely.
Okay? But what Floyd was saying is you take that and you harness it and you use it to your benefit. You internalize it, and now you go out and do something you couldn't have done without that.
Otherwise, yep.
Yeah.
So did you follow your dad? I don't think you did, but did you follow him to Notre Dame? Where did you go?
I did not. That's a long story. We probably don't have time to get into it. He's still disappointed. No, after I graduated from Xavier, I went to Boston College.
Okay. Another Jesuit school?
And yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, and I got my degree I majored in accounting, and I minored in math. But I'm going to tell you a little funny story. When I graduated from BC, at the time there was the Big Eight.
Yep.
I had no idea what the Big Eight firm was.
Even when you graduated?
I had no
Wow.
idea. The Big Eight to me, and I'm dating myself, but
I was Big Six when I came
okay.
in, so.
Those who are my age will remember there was a football conference called the Big Eight. It included Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska. That shows you how long ago again. I had never in my life heard of a Big Eight firm. Just never had heard of one. And after I graduated from BC, the day after I graduated, I drove out to California. And I spent the summer in a town called Ventura.
Oh, no, well.
Okay, I lived on the beach. I did nothing but work out and live on the beach. In August, I drove back to Boston, and I pursued my MBA at Babson. And when I graduated from Babson, I did know then what a Big Eight firm was.
Yep.
But I had zero interest, none whatsoever. I wanted to go into the food service business.
Were you interested in tax and accounting and all that stuff even at that point in time, or?
No, but I'm
No.
gonna.
Okay.
It's another interesting story.
Yeah.
Now you have to realize when I started college, you know, I was young. I was 17.
Right.
Okay, and I said to myself, areas like people management, human resources, marketing, sales, you know, all the skills needed to be successful in business. Either you had those talents or you didn't.
They were innate, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought, you know, you were born with those particular talents. But what I was really confident of, nobody could have been born with talents for accounting or tax. So I said to myself, what I'm going to do in college is I'm going to learn accounting and tax. So when I speak to those geeks I'll understand what they're saying. Little did I know, my 30 years of my 35-year career would be spent in that particular area.
So you're at Babson, you learn about accounting and tax, and now you know what the Big 8 is. Now, how did you make it? What was the step to get, I guess, into the Deloitte & Touche predecessor firm?
Well, I went into the food service business.
Okay.
I went to work for a chain of steakhouses called Valley's Steakhouse. There were about 26 restaurants, all on the East Coast. They were all the way from Maine down to Florida. That's really where I wanted to spend my career because I loved the food service business. I loved the restaurant business. Yep. Okay. And something didn't go right with Valley Steakhouse. The owner died. I think they eventually went into bankruptcy. And then I ended up working for a company called Sky Chefs out in Chicago.
Are they the ones that service all the airlines?
You got it. Yep. I was a food and beverage manager at the O'Hare Airport.
Yep.
I then had an accident and from physical activity, and I had to have my shoulder rebuilt.
Oh, wow.
And so I went back to New York, had my shoulder rebuilt, and back then they didn't have arthroscopic surgery. And so they had to make a pretty big incision. It was common for dislocated shoulders.
Right.
But back then they said you had to stay in a sling for about, I think it was, I don't remember, 10 to 12 weeks.
Wow.
And I've always been a very physically active guy, and I was going nuts. I had no idea what to do. So I decided I'm going to study for the CPA exam. Don't ask me why.
Just on the whim.
Just on the whim. I needed something to occupy my time.
Right.
So I
could find a lot better things. I'm a CPA by background, so I can say.
Okay. So I studied for the exam, took the exam, and I passed it. Okay. And my father, came and talked to me, and my father was in the construction business, and he goes, look, if you want to come in and work with me, that's fine. He goes, but I suggest you don't. It's a difficult business. There are times when you're doing really well, and there are times when you're not doing well in the construction business, and a lot of it is due to the economy, not due to the particular individual talent of the person involved. So you ride high swings and low swings where you have no control. And, I did it because I had to do it. He goes, why don't you go work for one of these accounting firms? Get certified. If you don't like it, fine, you can come in, business with me, or, there are other things you can do. But maybe it's worth thinking about working for one of these firms. And my father had a number of friends who were working for a number of the Big 8. And they all told me the same thing. They said, Frank, we've known you for a period of time. You're never going to last at one of these big firms, okay? But we can get you an interview. But if we get you the interview and you're offered a position and you accept it, just do us a favor. No matter what happens to you in the first 2 years, you're going to take it. Doesn't matter what it is, you're going to take it. And then after you get your 2 years in one of these firms and you're a CPA, people will look at you and say, wow, he worked for a Big 8 firm. He's really got to be smart. He goes, that'll establish you for the rest of your life. But we know you're not going to make it, but please. So,
What, if you don't mind, what year was this?
1978.
Started in 78, okay.
Yeah. And so I said, yeah, sure, fine. So I narrowed it down to 2 firms. Interestingly, the firm that was then Deloitte Haskins & Sells and Arthur Andersen. And Deloitte Haskins & Sells offered me $500 more than Arthur Andersen. Deloitte Haskins & Sells offered me $17,500, and Arthur Andersen offered me $17,000. Okay, you look back at it now and you laugh. $500 meant something back then.
Oh, it's a lot, yeah.
Okay, and so I started with Deloitte New York at I think it was 2 Broadway, and my first day in the office, one of the administrative people came in and said, partner in charge of the office wants to see you. And I'm like, oh boy.
What did I do now?
Yeah. He wanted me to move a TV from his car that was parked in the parking lot to his wife's car who was out front waiting for it. So I did my first job pretty well.
That's funny. I reflecting on my recruiting, it was Deloitte or Anderson. And the reason why I didn't go to Anderson is they said, we'll bring you into the audit practice, but we think you're more of a consultant. And I'm like, I just got my CPA. I'm not going to, So I ended up coming to Deloitte, which was the best decision I ever made. But
Me too. No
best
question
decision I
about
ever
it.
made.
No
So
question.
we could spend hours talking
Yeah.
about Deloitte. I want to almost, so it's 1978 and you just moved to TV. So you probably ingratiated yourself to the managing partner. Let's move forward 21 years.
Okay.
So unbelievably successful at Deloitte. I think at that time,
Certainly, from my perspective, I never envisioned doing any of what I did.
Yeah.
That's why I'm eternally grateful for Deloitte. I don't think there was any other firm that I could have accomplished what I accomplished in.
And so it's 1999.
Yes.
At the time, you are now, I believe, the Western regional leader for Deloitte's
Regional
business,
managing
right?
partner. I'm running all the West Coast offices. I think it was back then it was about 6,000 people and $1 billion of revenue. But you have to remember, back then we were organized by geography.
Right.
Okay,
Very,
not by function.
Very different. And I remember that's where I think I had come across you was at this training, and I was from Northern California. And I'm like, who is this guy? But what I'm curious of, and I remember this like yesterday. I think I even mentioned this to you before. I remember getting a video, and you were one of the first people that I think actually used video. So this was once again 1999. I think it was somewhere on an internet site. An email was sent out, and it said, "I'm leaving the firm." And there's not a lot of Deloitte leaders that just pick up and leave. But you were going to a company, myCFO, and in many respects, it was a company that was looking to disrupt the financial services industry. You were working with James Clark. I don't know if it was a Jim. Did you call him Jim or James?
Jim Clark.
James Clark. But iconic founder of Silicon Graphics, and then also was
Netscape.
Netscape, yeah. So why? Why did you leave Deloitte? What drew you to myCFO?
There's no one item. It was a confluence of items, and I think you have to understand the environment back then. What Jim Clark did with Netscape, which people don't focus on, is it made the internet a commercial vehicle.
Yep.
Okay. I want you to think about that. All the buying people do on the internet today, that was because of what Netscape did. Mm-hmm. Okay. And Jim Clark was the founder of Netscape, and Jim Barksdale was the CEO of Netscape. Okay. And it's easy to look at something today and say, well, it's pretty simple. I go on Amazon, I buy a book, no big deal. Back when the internet first got it started in the 90s, it was about communication. Somebody would send an email, or you'd dial up and you'd hear, to get on. Now all of a sudden, you had this guy. This team wasn't a particular guy. It was a team of people at Netscape that made this a commercial vehicle, and it exploded. Everyone was changing their business model. Amazon, eBay. Who thought Amazon was going to have as much of an effect on a Barnes and Noble as it did? But it was really the first seismic disruptor in business. Okay, it was, and arguably the greatest financial disruptor since World War II, maybe even since World War I. Okay. I got a call from Kleiner Perkins.
Yep.
Jim Clark from Netscape.
Had you ever met him before?
No. We were trying to meet all these people at Deloitte, and we couldn't get in to see them.
Right.
Now
right.
all of a sudden,
now he's calling you.
Now we're getting in to see them. Spoke with the gentleman who was then the chairman and CEO of Cisco. And so, I've got 4 or 5 of the largest players in Silicon Valley talking to me about what they're trying to accomplish with this company. And, I remember when I went into a conference room very similar to this, and Jim Clark was in it with his chief technology officer who was with him at Netscape. And they had all these boards laid out showing exactly what they're going to do in the financial services area. It was incredible. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. The change it was going to make, just everything that had been done by people was now going to be done by computer,
Right.
except for the value-added stuff, which is kind of the holy grail of professional services,
Sure.
if you will. You want as much of the mundane and the repetitive to be done with technology to free up all your people to do the value-added. And I was at a point in my career with Deloitte where the way we were structured at that point, there was, from a realistic standpoint, I think nowhere else I could have gone. You know, the next step, at the time, the other regional managing partner was Bill Perrette, who ran New York. Mm-hmm. He was going to be the next CEO. Next
Yep,
CEO. Yep. I think the other three were Dave Hunterberg, Harry Witt, and I'm drawing a blank on Bill Stevens. But I was the youngest. And, you know, I didn't enjoy my regional managing partner role as much. I like being closer to people. You know,
right.
when you're managing 300 people, you know everybody, you know their birth dates, you know what's going on in their families, you can help them. When you're managing 6,000 people, you know nobody, okay? You don't influence anybody. And all of that came along at the same time. And I said to myself, you know, regardless of what happens, I'm going to spend some time with the brightest minds with respect to the internet in financial services. Even if it doesn't work out, I'm going to be able to come back somewhere. You know,
Right,
at the
right.
time, Deloitte none of the big firms liked bringing people back. Now that's changed, obviously, for good reason. But back then, you know, it wasn't like you knew you were going to have a job going back to Deloitte, because that was not as common.
Right.
Matter of fact, a lot of senior people said, once you leave, you never come back. Okay. Well, I get to myCFO and I realize everything that I saw on the board was a thought, was a plan. There was no technology that really did this. Okay, so, you know, when we're going through operations at myCFO, from a technology standpoint, they're trying to create this. Okay. Now, was I disappointed? And the answer is yeah, I was very disappointed. But it taught me a very good lesson. It taught me that all creative and innovative business disruption starts with thought. Okay, you have to get
With
the
an
thought.
idea. Yep.
You got to get that thought, and you have to get it on paper. You know, my term, written out.
Right.
But if you could have seen how all the major financial services organizations responded to us, you know, whether it was the brokerage houses, the big six firms, everybody was concerned. Everybody wanted to meet with us. We got to meet the chairman and CEOs of the largest New York private equity firms, financial services firms, and we laid out for them our plan. Now, they didn't know we didn't have the technology yet. We were working on it. But when they saw that plan, you could see they were concerned. You know, a lot of them wanted to buy us. And, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, well, wait a second, you know, talking about buying us for $750 million. We don't have anything. You know, I'm not saying this, I'm thinking it. You know,
Right.
But that's you saw how people got reacted in such, they went to the worst space, okay? What you have to remember about human nature, when something happens, people always go to the worst immediately.
Right.
Now, eventually, they come back. You know, something happens to your dog, gets hit by a car, where do you go? To the worst space.
Right.
Okay. Same thing happened in the financial disruption area. They all went to the worst space. All the top financial services companies, you know, whether they were in Chicago, whether they were in New York, whether they were in San Francisco, all the big financial services firms, the big six firm at the time, all were concerned.
What did it teach you, like, about being an industry disruptor? Was there any kind of big takeaways? Because now kind of the cliche or the term that everybody uses is, you know, you're either being disrupted or you are the disruptor. Maybe coming from both sides, what did it teach you about being the disruptor first?
The most surprising aspect to me as a disruptor is how much interest the largest companies in the world and the most influential management teams and executives in the world had in our little startup.
Interesting. What about, Frank, the one thing I'm always interested in is every company to a certain degree is at risk of being disrupted. Even Deloitte. But every company out there, even Amazon, even I've been reading articles about some of the ride-sharing companies with blockchain and all of that. What advice do you have for CEOs and others that are in a very successful business, but they know down the road, maybe very soon, there is something that potentially is going to change their business, but it's really hard for them to pivot because they are so financially successful? What advice would you have for them?
That's a great question. People get comfortable. The company's doing well. We're making money. We're employing people. We're doing good things. We're contributing to the community. But I was on the disruption side.
Yep. You were the disruptor.
Right.
Yep.
And this is a recommendation that I would make that I believe few will take. What I would do is I would take my most talented young executives.
Why do you say young?
Because older people tend not to change.
Okay.
Meaning, and age is not really the differentiator. It's just been my experience, having been young once, and viewed people. I was in a very senior position when I was young. I think that gave me an advantage over people, because many people who got to my level at Deloitte were
at the
in
end
the
of
late
their
50s.
career. Right.
I was in my mid-40s.
Yep.
Okay. I was still a risk taker. I still didn't care if, I lost my job. If I was in my 50s, I would have, because I'm making good money and I'm just holding out till retirement. Not every person does that, but I think 80% do.
Right.
Okay. And when you get older, sometimes something can't be done. When you're younger, you don't know something can't be done.
Could be advantage.
That's
Yep.
right.
Yep.
That's right. Exactly. So I would, and I would take younger executives, those who don't, the career's not going to be negatively affected. I'd fund them. I'd send them off to a separate part of the building, and I'd tell them, develop something that's going to put me out of business.
So almost empower,
because somebody else is going to do it.
Empower really good people
Yes.
to kill your business.
Not really good.
Great.
Your best.
Your best.
Okay. Now people don't want.
Which that's what makes it hard,
Yes,
right? Because now
that's
you're
right.
taking the
That's
best
right.
people who are running your core business and asking
Exactly.
them to do something
That's right.
differently.
That's right. So in the 90s, if Deloitte picked out its best young partners, great partners,
Yep.
and put them in a separate building in Wilton, where headquarters were back then, and said, develop something that's going to put us out of business, would have been interesting to see what they came up with.
I'm going to go off on a tangent because you said two things. You said two words that I thought were fascinating. I just want to, and I think it's linked to this conversation, but you said that in your mid-40s, when you were a leader, you were a risk taker, and you didn't care if you lost your job. Can you maybe drill down? Because that is fascinating, because to a certain degree, I would argue that people's success is oftentimes predicated by the risks they're willing to take. And the notion of I'd be willing to lose my job is very evocative, meaning it's like you put everything out there.
Yeah, and I didn't mean it as evocative as it came out. Look, I've already established the fact that I love Deloitte.
Yeah.
And I've already established the fact that I have a debt to the firm that can never be repaid, and that I truly do not believe I could have reached the levels of success within Deloitte in another firm. I just don't think so. I think Deloitte had the type of culture where someone like me could reach a relatively high level. But my ego has never been totally about Deloitte. There have been activities in my life that were more important with Deloitte. It just so happened those activities never interfered with Deloitte, and Deloitte never interfered with those activities. If Deloitte had interfered with some of those activities, I would have quit Deloitte.
Right. But Frank, I would, let me just try this out on you really quickly. I would argue, if you have a mindset, and it is all about mindset, that in order for Deloitte, let's just use Deloitte or any company to be successful, there are things that I need to do. But oftentimes, those things are about taking risks that may not be mainstream at an organization. And I would argue that certain leaders, I've even found myself in this, that because of your own personal perspectives of what you believe other people want of you, you hold back and you don't take those risks. And in the end, you're not successful. And so that's why when you said, I'm willing to lose my job over, over doing what I believe to be the right thing, that's not what you said, but I believe that's what you believe. Maybe not, is what allows leaders to be successful, because there's so much conservatism, I don't even know if that's a word, but in how people lead, because they don't take those risks that they do need to take.
I'm gonna give you a quote. Every morning, I only spend about 10, 15 minutes every morning. I review my goals, okay? And my goals, involve my personal life, physical activities, things that are important to me, things I want to accomplish. And I just read through them. It's not a, and at time to time I may adjust them, but it's important to constantly reinforce in your mind physically what's important to you and what you want to accomplish, okay? And in addition, over the years, I have accumulated probably 7 or 8 pages of quotes that are important to me. Those quotes come from books that I've read. They come from movies. Some people send me quotes because they know I like them.
You like them?
Yeah, and I thank them profusely, and I probably keep 10% of what. Now, you would read these quotes and may not have a particular meaning to you, but every single quote that I have has a particular meaning to me, and it may not be what you literally read in the particular quote.
Right.
Okay? But one quote that has always been important to me is that I would rather beg for forgiveness than ask permission. If it was something that I thought was right and thought that someone else may think was a little controversial, and that's, if you spoke to a lot of people, they would say, yeah, it sounds like Frank.
But I'm sure it's when you say beg for permission.
I'd rather beg for forgiveness.
Beg for forgiveness.
Than
Thank
ask
you.
permission.
But I think the
Again,
point is,
don't look at it literally.
That's my point. That's my point. It's like you're not going so far off the reservation.
No.
But there's always those rules that hold people back. Is what
Right.
I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
It's like I tell everyone that I work with, there are boundaries out there. There are fences. I just don't want you to see them. But they're there.
They're there.
Right?
So can you reflect just quickly? We're going to move to your next phase of your career. But before we go there, any lasting learnings from working with Jim Clark? So you talked about, his time at Netscape and Silicon Graphics, but anything that you took away that now you kind of reflect on and say, wow, because of that period of time I was there, it really helped me as a leader, or it taught me some things I otherwise wouldn't know. Any lasting impressions from working with him?
I don't know if there were lasting impressions. It was the first place I worked where I faced adversity, sometimes on a daily basis. I mean, we worried about payroll. Now, we knew we were going to get funding, but, I never had to worry about payroll before. I mean, I ran $1 billion business at Deloitte. I never worried about payroll.
Yeah.
Now I'm worried about payroll. I had to go out and we had to raise money. Deloitte, I never had to worry about raising money. So there were a number of things that I did after I already thought I was an accomplished businessman, that kind of, I got an appreciation of what it meant to have no money and payroll coming due.
Really, to run a business that is not even, I was going to say cyclical, but has the challenges of a startup. So you leave myCFO.
Yes.
And you go to Herbalife.
Herbalife.
So I'm guessing, given your kind of proclivity to health and wellness, was that something that drew you into Herbalife? Or maybe just tell the story of how you got there.
Herbalife was a Deloitte client.
Yep.
And I remember when I was transferred out to Los Angeles, one of the firm leaders said to me as I was transferring out, Frank, when you get out to LA, look at this company, Herbalife. I just don't understand. I don't understand it. Don't understand the business model. Is it going to get us in trouble? I don't know what these guys out in LA are doing. You're a New York guy. I trust you. Go out there and you got to come back and tell me. I said, oh, sure, okay. He was the boss. So I got it. So I get out to LA and I get at the time I'm running Southern California tax.
Yep.
And I go out and I, meet some of our larger clients. They're introducing the new guy who's coming in, from the East Coast. And I go out and I meet Herbalife. And at the time, the founder and owner of Herbalife was a gentleman by the name of Mark Hughes. Okay, Mark was about the same age I was. Young guy
Yep.
at the time. Very good-looking guy, very personable, very good dresser, and we hit it off. We hit it off personally and from a business perspective. I remember him telling me that he was very jealous that I could wear my hair in a ponytail, but he said he couldn't do that because now that he's a public company, it would, he's got enough image problems with it being multi-level marketing company.
Right.
He goes, when you work for a boring firm like Deloitte, you can get away with that stuff. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
I said, thanks,
Yeah,
Mark.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem. So he and I hit it off personally, but I also became a close business advisor to him. I mean, I would tell you, I don't think there was any business move he made that he didn't get me involved in. And for those who are not familiar with Herbalife, Herbalife is, everyone thinks of it as this multi-level marketing company.
Right.
Okay, multi-level marketing is the method in which they distribute their product. Okay, they have two products. They have inner nutrition and outer nutrition. Now, they didn't refer to it as that when Mark was there. I changed that classification when I got there. Inner nutrition, meaning something you put inside your body
Right.
to make you feel better and make you look better. Outer nutrition, something you put outside your body, whether it's skin, whether it was hair. And I did that to simplify the selling process for our brand ambassadors, which we call distributors.
Right.
Yeah, we have things for inner nutrition and we have things for outer nutrition. And it was fascinating company. Okay. Now, I've been a physical fitness fanatic since I was 13. I've been a nutrition fanatic since I was 13, and I've been a supplement fanatic since I was 13. Fanaticism and I go along very well because it keeps me disciplined.
I gotta just, I guess one of the things that I had heard, people would be like, oh yeah, we were in Deloitte board meetings in like the mid 90s, and they'd be like, what the hell is Frank taking out of his bag, like these crazy smoothies or shakes or whatever? I randomly heard that one time, so I've heard
I know who you heard that from, and I won't mention her name, but she used to give me a hard time about it.
Oh, that's too funny.
Right. And so what people don't understand about Herbalife, and I think it's very important to understand, the founder of Herbalife was founded in 1980. Mm-hmm. It was founded by Mark Hughes. At the time, Mark was 23 years old. Mark had a 9th grade education.
Wow.
Okay. His first sale was out of the trunk of his car. He sold 3 products, aptly named Formula 1, Formula 2, and Formula 3. Okay, nice and simple.
Yep.
Formula 1 was the staple. Okay. Now, this is 1980. What Formula 1 was probably the first meal replacement product ever developed. Now, today, meal replacement is very popular.
Right.
It exploded in the mid and late 90s with products like Metrex, et cetera. But now, everyone uses them, ready-to-mix drinks. This is 1980 when he started this. Okay.
Was there even did he even have any competitors at the time, or was anybody
sure
doing
there.
anything like
Weren't
this?
doing it the way he was doing it.
Yeah.
He did it nice, and he had a nice, simple theory. Okay, if you were 20 pounds or less overweight, you took 1 meal replacement instead of a meal.
Yep.
If you were more than 20 pounds overweight, you took 2. That was it.
It was that simple.
That's simple.
Yep.
Okay. When he passed away in 2000, and when I took over as CEO, we were doing business in 54 countries with $2 billion of revenue.
Wow.
Okay. I want you to think about that. A 23-year-old man starts a company out of the trunk of his car in 1980, selling 3 products, and when he unfortunately passed away way too soon,
20 years later, I guess. Yep.
20 years later,
Yep.
$2 billion with a B, 54 countries, And all anybody thinks of when they talk about Mark is multi-level marketing. Okay, this man was a genius. Okay, he had a ninth grade education. Since when does education and intellect ever correlated? That's nothing to do with it.
Right.
This man was a genius.
So what did he teach you though? So through that process, I'm guessing just the way you're talking about him made a big
high degree
impression.
of respect. Now, you also have to realize, because he had a ninth grade education, there wasn't much he could do to make a lot of money. Yeah, he couldn't go work for Deloitte, could he? Right. Not with a ninth grade education, unless you want to work outside of the professional area. And then you go work for Deloitte, you're not going to have much of a career outside of the professional area. Couldn't go work for a law firm, unless he went to the mailroom. The guy had, probably a little later on, we're going to get into my attributes of success.
Yep. Okay. We've got some questions coming.
You have never met a man who is better at facing off against adversity than Mark Hughes. Relentless. A 100% belief in his product and what that product can do. 100% belief. Devoted to the products. Devoted. Highest quality he wanted. He used them. His family used them. I'd hear rumors when I was the CEO about product, what's in the product, is it really any good? I tell people, I give this product to my mother. Okay? Do you think I'm going to give my mother a product that isn't great?
Got some issues, yeah.
I use it all. The people liked rumors about the company because it was multi-level marketing. And business people don't understand multi-level marketing, because when they hear multi-level marketing, the first word they think of is pyramid.
Right.
Okay? Now, I learned more about professional services working for Herbalife than I did in the 21 years I worked for Deloitte
Meaning
US.
because you were procuring professional services?
Here's why.
Yeah.
No. Well,
No.
that's part of it.
Yeah.
But here's why also. If you looked at the Herbalife direct selling, multi-level marketing model, okay, if you recruit somebody into your downline,
Yep.
okay, and that's analogous to a partner recruiting somebody out of college,
Yep.
okay, you have to spend a lot of time training that person, okay, both within Deloitte and within Herbalife, okay. The difference in Herbalife is if that person doesn't perform,
It hits you in the pocketbook immediately.
that individual person makes no money.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that partner equivalent who devoted all that time to training makes no money off of that person. At Deloitte, that's not a negative. Everybody makes money in that model. Okay.
Right.
So in Herbalife, if you're the partner equivalent and you're recruiting somebody in your downline, you make sure you're going to get someone who's really good. Because if you get somebody who's really good, they're going to start selling product really quickly. And they're going to start recruiting other people to sell product quickly. And you make money on everybody underneath you. Conversely, if you're a real talented college graduate, you want to go work for a partner who's going to train you, right?
Absolutely.
I want to work for the best companies in the world. Who do you serve, Mike? Tell me you're good. I'm going to interview you. Okay. Same thing.
I've got some great clients.
I know
No,
you
I'm
do.
teasing.
That's why I want to work for you. Same thing happened in multi-level marketing.
Right.
The really good entry-level people want to know how the person that recruits them into business is going to help them, because it works both ways.
So it sounds like in some respects the big takeaway that you had was, and you probably knew this going in, but the importance of kind of really spending time with people and engaging them and training them and doing all of those things when you came back to professional services. Is that, am I cold?
I'm going to say it
or
differently.
warm? Yep.
Say it differently. If I had any particular skill that I believed differentiated me, is I was able to put in systems to help people be successful. Okay? Everyone's got a genius.
Right.
Okay? Everyone. I don't care who it is. As management, it's our responsibility to help you identify that genius, put that genius to work for us so we can be successful. Okay? Conversely, everybody's got a weak point. Some have more than one. Okay? Our responsibility as management is to identify that weak point, limit its effect on the firm, but also work with you to help minimize that weak point, or even better, turn it into a strength.
Right.
Because when you understand your weaknesses, then sometimes you can turn them around to become strength, just like sometimes your strengths become your weaknesses.
Right. You know, one of the things that we focused on a lot, and I think it's actually something that's in vogue now within businesses, is that whole notion of strengths. And I think what I've seen in my career is that there's oftentimes an overemphasis on weaknesses and not necessarily trying to position you enough with your strengths. So I think it's actually a great point that you made, and something I'm seeing quite a bit just in professional services and at my clients. Let me ask you, I want to almost channel, you're a CEO of an organization that one could argue, had some risks. How did you think about risk as a CEO? And the reason why I bring this up, Frank, is Deloitte has the largest risk services practice in the world. Okay, and we work with clients, in many different industries at many different levels. But one of the things I've begun to experience is as we talk to CEOs and people that are actually running the business, they think a bit differently about risk. And so at your time at Herbalife, there were some risks you had to deal with. I'd love just to hear a CEO's perspective on risk, and maybe if you could just channel that. Yeah.
I identified very early what I believe to be the biggest risk factor at Herbalife. And I say there were two.
Yep.
One, because we were involved with inner nutrition and outer nutrition, it was ingredients.
Yep.
You want to make sure the ingredients were
what was going in.
You got it.
Was
okay.
Safe. Yep.
The second was, remember I told you that at Herbalife we had what's known as a direct selling model.
Yep.
That means you use outside independent contractors. Some people call them brand ambassadors. At Herbalife we called them distributors. Okay. I had 1 million distributors. Okay. I had turnover. I don't remember exactly what the turnover rate was, but about 90% a year.
Wow.
Okay. And so every year, you've got 1 million distributors, you got 900 leaving, you got 900 coming back.
And they're your brand. I mean, they're the extension of your brand.
And they're your sales force.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So my two risk areas were ingredient oriented and what are my distributors saying out in the marketplace? Okay. So the first thing I did, and this was a little bit controversial in the company, Bill Allison was the Deloitte consulting partner.
Yep.
That was on Herbalife, and I sat down with him and his team, and the person that I considered to be the lead client service partner on Herbalife, an audit partner named Herb Perlmutter.
Oh yeah,
okay.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Took a lot of solace in the fact that he was the audit partner, and there was the senior tax representative was Jim Yeager. So I got Jim, I got Herb, and I got Bill in my office, and I talked to him, and I said, look, I need a point person, okay? I know all three of you. I have a high degree of respect for all three of you, but I can't deal with all three of you. When I got a problem, I want one person to identify, and that person is Herb. I don't care who Deloitte anoints as the lead client service partner. He's the guy that I'm dealing with,
right?
Okay. And then I told them, here are my two biggest fears, okay? Something happens with our ingredients, and something happens with our distributors who we can't control. So we put in a whole strategy. Now, most of it was consulting oriented, and we put in place steps to ensure that the quality of our ingredients were exactly what we wanted. Now, I had a very simple saying. Very simple. I'm a simple guy.
Yep.
If it's in the product, it's on the label. If it's on the label, it's in the product. Nice and simple.
Right.
Okay. That was a guarantee we made to our customers. Okay. We made them 3 guarantees. 1, the product does what it says. It's efficacious. 2, the product's good for you. And 3, if it's on the label, it's in the product. If it's in the product, it's on the label.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, that sounds nice and simple. Okay. But now what we had to do is we put in a process where we tracked our ingredients all the way back to the raw materials provider. We did a lot of our own manufacturing. We had changed that. We didn't use a lot of third-party manufacturing. We did some, but small. But even when you're your own manufacturer, you're buying raw materials from someone. So we identified the purchase of raw materials to be our highest risk because we controlled the manufacturing process. Not saying something can't go wrong. I mean, look, something can always go wrong.
Sure.
Okay, but the biggest risk that we didn't control was the purchase of raw materials. So we focused 80% of our emphasis on raw material purchase and testing. We tested at the person who sold it to us and when it got delivered. And then with respect to our distributors, we put in a very high level of compliance and product training. This is what you can say, this is what you can't say. Now, was the system perfect? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But those were the two risk areas that would, quote unquote, keep you up at night.
Is there any, from a CEO's perspective, one of the things I oftentimes see is a CEO not necessarily understanding the value that the risk management team could provide. Do you have any, and I don't know if you have any insight into this or not, but do you have any guidance, I guess, to risk professionals so that they provide more value or provide more insight or intelligence to the CEO? Do you know where I'm going with this? Is sometimes risk can be put off to the side and they kind of do their own compliance related activities and it may not be aligned with what the objectives or needs of the CEO are.
I'll say it differently. A lot of times risk and compliance gets caught up in being reactionary,
right,
rather than proactive.
Yep.
And the reactionary stuff is not going to get you in trouble. Okay, you may not file something right with the Department of Labor. Okay, you're going to get a slap. You're going to pay a fine.
Right.
Okay, but the proactive risk control, something God forbid gets into your ingredients, that someone suffers major injury. That's to me proactive. Okay.
And it almost sounds like, I totally agree with you. And this is actually one of the things that we're trying to work on with clients is anticipating what those risks are, but then also bringing in, the word I use is intelligence. Like if you can help a CEO understand, here's the things you need to worry about, but even beyond that, here is, potentially the onset of that risk because of some intelligence that we're bringing to you. Something so that it goes beyond just, hey, here's a risk, we already know about it. Here's something that you actually should be thinking about.
Let me say it differently and make sure I understand it.
Yeah,
that always helps me understand. You have certain data to tell me that a supplement company, its highest risk is here,
yep,
and you're not focused on it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yep.
that'd
yep.
be
absolutely. Okay.
We didn't have that back then. Okay.
Well, and I think that's an emerging area.
Yeah,
and that's
we didn't have that back then. Risk and compliance is not different than human resources. There are a lot of things you can do in human resources that are reactionary. Make sure people get evaluated, and make sure every 6 months someone gets reviewed for a raise. And I'm not telling you that's not important, but that's not human resources. Okay, human resources is spending time with your people,
right?
Developing them. I've said very often in the professional services arena, the best human resource strategy is a revenue enhancement strategy, and the best revenue enhancement strategy is a human resource strategy, because what your people want to learn is how to be successful in business,
right.
And they want to spend time with leaders. And if you have the right revenue enhancement strategy embedded into your professional services firm, you're going to have the best human resource strategy of any professional services firm.
In many respects, one of the things that I'm taking away, it's risk from a compliance perspective is obviously important, but if you could bring more value through the risk process, whether it's insights or how you engage with the business or the things that you do, it's going to be more valuable. So you came back to Deloitte.
I did, yeah.
Holy moly, you're back at Deloitte.
I had forgotten all about it.
Exactly.
I sold Herbalife to two private equity firms.
Yeah.
Which was a great experience. From my perspective, had to. We sold bonds in order to raise money to take the company private. I thought I never liked the fact that Herbalife was a public company, just because when you're a multi-level marketing company,
you're defending yourself.
Yeah, and if you're a private company, then people aren't worried about shorting your stock or what your stock price is. It's not important because they can't make money on it.
Right.
When you're a private company, no one cares.
No one cares. Exactly.
Okay. So we had not an opportunity. We really had to the way when Mark died, the way that his trust was structured. Once we got the stock price to a point that we thought was very appealing, and it wasn't in the beginning, We then made the decision to invite in a number of private equity firms, and we got the stock price to a level that we thought was excellent, and we ended up selling the company to private equity firms, and Herbalife has done great.
Since then, yep.
Great leadership, great in the marketplace, and couldn't be happier. Love that company. Couldn't be happier. Love that company.
So what made you come back? Well, what was the timing after you ended up selling Herbalife? You left Herbalife to when you came back to Deloitte?
I got a call from a gentleman by the name of Bill Perrette. I think you know Bill. He's somewhat.
I've heard of the guy.
Yeah, he's an iconic global CEO and iconic U.S. CEO.
Yep.
And also a good friend. And he said to me, he goes, he knew I was a sports fan, and he said, "Look, there's an event taking place in Madison Square Garden in New York. I'm living in L.A. at the time. Why don't you come out and we can have dinner?"
Was this a Knicks game or?
No. It was a boxing match.
Oh, okay.
And I said, "Bill, you're calling me from New York, okay? I live in Brentwood, and you're telling me to come out for a fight and to have dinner." I said, "Why don't you really tell me what's on your mind?" He goes, No, that's okay. I said, "Bill, look, we go back a long time, and we do. I was Bill was the office managing partner of the newly formed Connecticut practice,
Yep.
and I was a staff person. I got transferred up from New York after 2 years, and I worked in the Connecticut practice. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Bill was the eventually, obviously not right away. Bill was the office managing partner of Connecticut. I was the tax managing partner, and Greg Weaver was the audit managing partner.
Greg Weaver made me partner.
Yeah. Okay. So Greg's another iconic. Someone asked me how'd you get three egos into the same room. And I said, I put Bill and Greg in a different office. So Bill called me up, and I ended up. I gave him a hard time, but I ended up going meeting him for dinner. And he said to me, something is going on in Italy, and I don't understand it. He goes, "I think I have a problem." And I said to Bill, and I told you, Bill and I were close. Doesn't mean Bill and I didn't have differences. Bill and I had some significant differences, but I always had a high degree of personal and professional respect for him, and I believe vice versa. And I said, "Bill," I said, "next to me, you're the biggest control freak I know, and you're telling me you think you have a problem?" I said, "That makes no sense."
Right.
He goes, "Well, I got a problem. I just don't know how big it is." I said, "Okay." He goes, would you go out there and look at it?" I said, "But look, I have no problem going out and look at it." I said, "But you got a team of people here. Why don't you send them out?" He goes, "Frank, I've sent teams of my financial advisory services people out, my CFO department. I still can't get a straight answer." I said, "Bill, what do you mean?" So I said, "Fine. I'll go out there. I want to spend some time in Italy. It's
a nice place to hang.
It's where I'm from.
Yeah.
And I always had a goal that I eventually wanted to learn how to speak better. So I go out to Italy, and I spend a couple of weeks there. And what had happened is that the Deloitte and Touche firm had just combined with the former Arthur Andersen firm.
Right.
Okay. Now it wasn't a legal merger because of what happened with Arthur Andersen, but I would say that 90% of the former Arthur Andersen firm in Italy combined with the Deloitte and Touche firm.
Right.
And mergers and professional services firms are always very interesting. And I had lived through the Deloitte Haskins and Sells and Touche Ross merger, and so I knew what to look for. I mean, before I even went there, I could have told you what was wrong. Okay. But I was a little concerned because all these other people had gone in and they didn't identify what the problem was. So I went in and I spent a couple of weeks, and as you would imagine, people are trying to stonewall you, not giving you information. This person says they don't speak English, yet they do speak English. But that's okay.
What you would expect. Yep.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
It was a great experience. So what I found out was exactly what I thought. You had a merger of two really outstanding professional services firms, all of whom had what I would classify as delusions of grandeur. When two great professional services firms merge, they say, wow, we, Deloitte, we're really strong in manufacturing, trade, and energy. And we, the former Arthur Andersen firm, we're really strong in financial services and technology. And we combine that together, we're going to be a powerhouse in the marketplace.
Yeah, on paper, it looks great, right? Yep.
And in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. What they didn't realize was the first thing that happens after two great professional services firms merge is they contract because you lose clients.
Sure.
Right? Because there are conflicts. Coca-Cola doesn't want the same auditor as Pepsi. All right. Yep. And so you have that issue in Italy. All right. So what we find out is we've got 30% more people than we need. We have 30% more real estate than we need. And I want you to think about that for a second. We had probably about 6,000 people. So that means, about 1,800 too many people. Mm-hmm. Okay. And Western Europe, outside of the UK, is different than the US. In the US, you've got 30% too many people, and somebody sends out a memo and get rid of 30% of your people.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Italy is an environment where people don't get fired.
Right.
That doesn't happen. I had senior partners in my office, almost in tears, telling me that they never had to fire
a single person. Yeah.
Not a single person, but there were incidents where they hire someone because someone did something wrong, but never what we would classify in the U.S. as a layoff. Okay. So I go back to Bill, tell him what the problem is. He goes, great. How much is it going to cost me to get out of this problem? I said, well, you didn't ask me that. You just asked me to tell you what
was
the
going
problem
on.
is.
Yeah, exactly.
I go, what do you, I'm one person there. What do you expect? And he goes, well, go back and find out how much it's going to cost me.
So can I ask, so at this time, are you almost just an advisor or a consultant?
I'm an advisor.
Yeah, you're just going to. Okay.
I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. I like Bill. I'm not doing it for free. So he goes, look, and I wanted to do it.
Yep.
Okay. And so I said, okay, I'll go back there. And so Bill and I both went to Italy. And, Bill was very straight with the partners, very transparent, and said, look, we all know you got a problem here. Okay. The way Deloitte had been structured, Bill can't come in and tell those people what to do.
Right.
He goes, you have to vote Tirelli in as your chairman and CEO. Okay. You have to change your legal structure so that Tirelli has the requisite powers to straighten out the firm. Okay. So, not to get into the legal complications, but what we did is, what I call the one man, one vote. Me. Okay. Because what I had told Perret and DTT is we have to move quickly.
Right.
And we couldn't go through the normal partner voting process to get things done.
Well, and also bringing everybody on the journey and winning the hearts and minds. And then, like you said, the vote. You just needed to have authority.
I'll tell you what surprised me was the level of talent of some of the people we had in that firm. It was incredible. The former Arthur Andersen firm had some of the best technicians I've ever worked with. And I've worked with the best. They were outstanding professionals. Outstanding. And from the Deloitte side, they were very good in the marketplace. And so, I knew once we got this firm structured properly, we were going to be a powerhouse in the marketplace.
Frank, it almost seems like you had to change very quickly the culture that had been developed over years, many years.
We had to change it on a dime.
How do you? So
got rid of leaders, put the leaders I wanted. I had, what was great about that experience, I had no time to think. I think there is a perception of cultures, and Italy has a perception of Americans, even Italian Americans.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, they knew that my parents, families, from Italy, but I'm an American.
Sure.
Born and raised.
How did they accept you when you came in initially?
Very hesitantly. I mean, they were stonewalled. I think, they did not realize that I wasn't particularly intelligent and I wasn't particularly talented, that I was relentless. I was there 24/7. 24/7. I just outworked them. They thought I was going to be going back to the U.S. for a week and coming back for 2 weeks. Oh, absolutely not. I was there 24/7.
Do you think there was any
24/7.
benefit for you being an outsider? Meaning, and what I'm trying to channel is, in a time of crisis, which you could argue to a certain degree this was a crisis, is there value in bringing somebody in to manage through that? That's not part of the core group that was there.
I'm going to say it differently again.
Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
I like when you say things differently. To clarify what I'm trying to get at.
I believe the fact that they didn't know me was an advantage, because I sat down with the leadership team and I was very blunt with them. And I said, look, you don't know me. I said, now, maybe you have some people in the U.S. that you have relationships. I said, I suggest you speak to them, because let me tell you what's not going to happen. Okay. One, I'm going to outwork everybody in this room. And two, once I make my mind up, that's it. It gets done. I said, and this is what I made up my mind to do. And I think when I had that meeting with them, that was a turning point. And they understood. They had some word for me, and I can't remember what it was, but maybe I can't repeat it either.
We can talk. We can use some words that. This isn't PG-13, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So, Frank, I get one of the things that you just made me think about was, it seems like one of the key attributes in a time like this is clarity of communication. Would you agree with that?
No question. I think it was very important to be transparent. I think it was very important to be honest, and I think it was very important to constantly communicate. Something that I told all our people, and I told everyone, that we had to downsize by 30%. And there are some cultural commonalities amongst people too. People have egos.
Right.
People have pride, and people want to be treated with dignity. And that's something that's always been important to me. Sometimes people say, well, you should get rid of that person and make an example of them. Okay. And I never did that. And there were times when people who were my boss told me that I should get rid of this person and make an example of him, and I'd never do that, because I don't care who you are, unless you did something, inviolate, wrong, morally
Something
wrong.
against the law or against company policy.
You got to give that person dignity.
Right.
Okay. And I've always wanted to treat everyone with dignity. And what I told all the employees in Italy was, this is the situation we're in. So I was extremely transparent with our people. And one of the things I told them is I understand that when you get let go, it's traumatic. It affects your ego. It affects your self-worth. You question yourself. I said, and you don't know me, and I'm going to try and communicate this effectively. But what I want you to understand is the fact that if you are one of the people that we're letting go, it does not mean you're not talented, doesn't mean you're not intelligent, and doesn't mean you're going to be incredibly successful somewhere else. We got a problem. We have 30% too many people. And I gave them an analogy. And the analogy I used was the soccer player, Francesco Totti. And I won't use that example here, but the example I'll use here is, I'm not a Patriots fan, but Tom Brady.
Tom Brady.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll say that arguably Tom Brady is the best football player in the NFL.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I want you to envision for a second that you've got 50 Tom Bradys on your team. Okay. Well, the Tom Brady who plays quarterback, I'm pretty good. I feel pretty good. But I'm not sure about the Tom Brady who's playing left tackle. I'm not sure about the Tom Brady who's playing middle linebacker. So you follow my logic? I can't use 50 Tom Bradys. I need
it's
one.
a team, right?
I need one. And so the 49 Tom Bradys I'm letting go are still Tom Brady. Still the best quarterback in the NFL. I just need one. And I'm not sure how accepted the explanation was, but I think they appreciated the fact that we tried to leave them with some dignity. You know, I'm not telling you that everybody that we let go left with dignity or didn't sue us, but we must have let go over 1,000 people. I think we had 2 or 3 lawsuits.
I think what's important, though, is you treated them, you treated them with dignity. I don't want to keep using that word, but sometimes there is the risk that you look at these individuals just as low performers. And I think what you're saying is these people are fantastic and they are critical, or they have a lot to add, in this world. It's just at this point in time at Deloitte, it's not the place because we've got the resources that we need. And so you left them so that they could hold their ego intact and go on and move to do something else.
I'd say it. The answer to the question is yes. Yeah. But I'd also add this, and I think this is universal. In order to reach your maximum level of success, you have to be in the right environment for you.
For you, yep.
Okay. And a lot of times it's the way, and we don't mean to do it, but it's the way we communicate it.
Sure.
We got to get rid of our lowest performers. Okay. Now you got that stigma. A leader will say, Mike, where you got to get rid of your lowest performers, get rid of your lowest 10%. And you may not communicate that, but they hear about it. People hear everything. And when they hear, oh, gee, I'm one of the lowest 10% performers, is that right? And they leave and they're upset with the firm and, their dignity is it's okay to be upset with the firm. You have to keep their dignity and their ego intact. Now, not always going to be successful, but you have to try. And what's really important about that, not that the people who leave with their dignity intact. The rest of your people see the way you treated them.
Absolutely.
Okay? And if you don't treat them like that, when it comes time for them to leave, they're not going to tell you ahead of time. You know when they're going to tell you? When they've already accepted the job. That's right.
So, Frank, it's pretty clear what your initial priorities were. Is there anything that you would have done differently when you reflect on it? Like in that initial stage when you came in, I think you were very focused on being clear, concise, and communicating what you're going to do. You obviously needed to deal with the people, the fact that you had more people than you needed. But reflecting, and what I'm trying to pull out is, as leaders come into crisis situations like this, is there anything you do differently, any learning, anything that you would impart on other leaders coming into a similar situation?
If I said no, then that may be a bit arrogant to say, oh, well, he did everything perfect the first time around. Right. But I'm going to tell you, when I look back on my experience, and I absolutely loved my experience. There is nothing that could have transpired in my career that I would have sacrificed for doing the Deloitte Italy CEO and chairman position. It was, I can't tell you how indebted I am to the firm for being given that opportunity, and indebted to DTT, the global firm, and to all the global leaders, Bill Perrett and John Connolly, and quite frankly, all the European CEOs, because they're the ones that gave me the support. But my career I would not have felt fulfilled looking back on it now had I not done that. I tend to look at, and this is an ego statement. That's my legacy at Deloitte.
Yep.
Is what happened
you were
at
able
Deloitte
to do.
Italy.
Well, can you touch on that? So, what's the end of the story? And obviously, the story is being written, but obviously, a lot of good.
You hit it. I want to hit on that.
Okay.
Let me tell you what I learned.
I got him. Yeah. He's excited.
Yeah. Let me tell you what I learned.
Yep.
You're not successful unless your successor is successful.
Interesting.
Okay. And that's something I never focused on before. Never. I think from an ego standpoint, people like to think, well, if I'm not there, maybe the firm's going to fall apart, or
it's all about me. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm, nobody's indispensable, but I am.
Yeah.
Okay. I realized when I realized that this was going to be my legacy. Now, whether anybody else considers that my legacy is not important, I'd like them to think that, but It's not. What's important is that I consider it my legacy. And what I wanted to make sure when I left there was I wanted to make sure that firm continued to be successful. Otherwise, people would say, Tirelli, he's strong personality, strong-willed guy. It was successful because he imposed his personality on the firm rather than, he built a firm to last forever.
Right.
Okay, and my successor was Enrico Chai, and arguably Enrico's doing a better job than I did, okay, because the firm is thriving. People are being developed, leaders are being developed. As I mentioned when I first got there, they had, the Italian partners, some of the most talented partners I had ever worked with. I was really surprised at the level, especially in all the functions, but especially in consulting. Consulting had 10 partners that I thought could run consulting. Consulting's got 10 partners that I think could run global consulting.
Wow.
That's how talented those guys are. Oh, outstanding. And I'm not going to mention names because I know I'm going to forget someone, okay? But these guys, the consulting, all our functions had a problem when we got there, but consulting had the biggest problem.
Frank, last question on this, and this is more just kind of now that you've had a chance to reflect. Why do you think certain leaders thrive in these type of situations, a crisis, and some don't do well? Is there any secret sauce that you would impart on others? Maybe things that people can work on or think about, as they may enter a crisis.
A lot of that is individual driven.
Yep.
From my perspective, people would say, well, he may thrive to win. I don't care if I win or not.
Right.
I hate to lose. I hate to put my mind to something and not accomplish it. I don't care if I don't win, but I don't like to lose. And I can't tell you what the difference is. I don't care if I win. It kills me if I lose.
We're going to pivot. This is my favorite part of the conversation because now it's, your collective years and your wisdom on people and leadership. I'm going to roll through some questions. The first one is maybe a bit self-interested, but I'm always curious, I'm always curious to understand how a CEO thinks. And so one of the things a lot of times CEOs talk to me about is, hey, you know what? Yes, I manage risk, but I'm in the business of taking risks. As a CEO, and maybe you didn't think about this, but how do you balance risk taking from managing risk, especially to your brand? Thinking about when you're at Herbalife or other places, how do you balance that? Or did you even think about it?
No, I thought about it a lot. I thought about it a lot in Italy.
Yep.
And I will tell you that in Italy, I was a lot more risk adverse than I was when I was at the U.S. firm.
Right.
And for a number of reasons. One, when I was in Italy, the brand was much more important. And I'm not going to tell you I wouldn't take any risk, but almost no risk.
So it's almost to a certain degree the situation
you had to determine. You had the Deloitte brand.
Yep.
Okay. Got tarnished in what happened with the initial merger. Everyone in the marketplace knew we were doing poorly financially. Everyone was projecting we were going to go bankrupt and go out of business. We had a well-publicized lawsuit with Parmalat. So the most important thing from my perspective was to right-size the firm, make it profitable, start the growth engine, and protect that brand, which meant almost no risk. Now, had I taken over Deloitte Italy in a different situation, I may have been willing to take on a little bit more risk. But in that situation, I wasn't willing to take on any risk.
Absolutely. Interesting. How about, I know you're passionate about people. Can you share your philosophy on kind of developing and mentoring people? It's something that you and I have talked offline quite a bit about.
If I look at what I've done with respect to people, I've always tried to emphasize to them that regardless of who you are, regardless of how much talent you believe you have or don't have, everybody has got an area where they excel.
Yep.
Everybody. And what I tried to do is put in place processes that found that one area where you were outstanding and exploited it. Okay? because I truly believe everyone's got that
Why do you
one
think
area.
then, so there's almost a presumption in that comment that a lot of people aren't focusing on, their core genius or their strengths? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, because a lot of times institutions have a model for success, and they want everybody to fit into that model.
Right.
Okay? This is what you do. This is how you get to be successful. And, maybe it works for 50% of the people. Okay? But you got another 50% who respond to something a little bit differently. So it's one of the reasons I didn't enjoy my regional managing partner position as much as I did my tax managing partner position. Was my tax managing partner position, I was supervising 600 people. My regional managing partner position, I was managing 6,000 people.
Yep.
Okay. Now, you want to create a culture and you want to create systems where this is replicatable. But with 600 people, I could just about get to know everybody. Mm-hmm. And I touch people all the time. I walk the halls. I knew when their birthdays were. I'd say something, not a big deal. Hey, special day for you today, huh? Just something that let them know they were important. So what I developed over the years, part is what I called my customer service blueprint dashboard. And that's how I managed the entire practice. I took every client we had. I took every future client, didn't call them targets. Words
Different
make a
mindset.
difference.
They do.
Okay. Target means maybe you get it, maybe you don't. Future client says, I'm going to get it. Okay. And so I organized every single client we had, every future client we had, every area that we brought value, and I assigned every single person in our department to a existing client, client service teams,
Right.
but they're already there,
Yep.
or to future clients. Okay. And those teams, we organized around teams, had to meet monthly. And they had revenue goals, and they had all the value propositions we had for the marketplace, and they had to ensure that got brought out to our clients. But the real, what I call magic sauce in that process, was that your people from entry level to senior partners met monthly.
Right.
Okay. Now, you show me a human resource model that is better than that. Okay. And they were all working to get better at what they came into the firm for. Now, I'm not telling you the compliance side of human resources is not important. It is.
Right.
Okay. But what your people really want is the ability to develop their skill set to be successful in client service. That's why they came here. And to interface with the best client service people we have, which is our partners, directors, senior managers, et cetera. And this system did that.
And it also goes back to your point about they probably were allowed to focus on the things that they were good at,
Yes,
great at.
that's right.
So let me ask you, I know that you have a formula for thriving. I think there's 5 elements to
Success.
thriving. Success.
Yes.
You want to share them?
Sure. Before I give you the 5 attributes that you need to succeed,
Yep.
and I think it's important for people to understand the activity that you're going to succeed in is determined by you. Okay?
Yep.
Not your spouse, not your children, not your parent, not your pastor, not your rabbi, not your partner in charge. You make the decision in what activities you're going to be successful.
Take ownership.
Yeah.
Yep.
And society doesn't define what success is. You do. Okay? So we get that out of the way. I
was just going to, that's pretty important. I mean, can you maybe drill down just for a second? Because that's pretty important, because I think what the implication is.
Sure.
Is
If I asked you, what's success? Most people, not you, I meant plural, not you personally.
Yeah, I know.
Most people say, got a nice job, you're making good money, you got a nice house, yeah, nice family. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. That's your decision. Okay. Now, society will have a definition of success, and if you want to marry yourself to
what society
society's
wants for you.
definition,
Yep.
and it really doesn't meet your, to use your term, purpose,
Yep.
you're going to have a pretty empty life.
Right.
Okay. You're going to work for 30 years. You're going to be the CEO of Deloitte in the U.S., and you always want to be a professional football player. Okay, crazy example, but you're the one who has to define what success is, not
Well, Frank,
society.
I asked you this because I actually think there's a lot of people out there that don't, and you went back to and you talked about how you look at your goals and the things that you do. My guess is that's linked back to the things that you actually like to do, the things that you've chosen. I think what's really important is for people just to stop and think about that which is important to them and make sure that they're not being influenced by all those different groups, and then, put their career or whatever it is on a trajectory that gets them excited.
Yeah. Pick a number of things that you really like to do. Now, look, this is life. There are times you have to do things you don't like.
Right.
Okay? But if you pick an event and you want to be successful at it, I guarantee you do these 5 things, you'll be successful.
Okay.
Guarantee it.
Everybody get your paper out.
I want to emphasize there are 2 things that aren't on there: intellect and talent. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not telling you that intellect and talent aren't important. Okay? They are. But if you want to be successful, I'd say 98% of the population has the requisite talent and intellect to be successful. Okay? So that's not going to be a determining factor. Okay? Factor number 1, you really want to be successful in something, you better be passionate about it. Mm-hmm. Okay? If you're not passionate about it, and passion has different connotations and definitions. If you want to say something with purpose that means a lot to you, you can do that. But when I mean passion is when you go to bed at night, you can't wait to get up the next morning and do it.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
You're passionate about what it is. 2, you got to have a plan. Okay? And that plan should be written. And that doesn't mean that plan doesn't get changed. It does get changed. Okay? The plan is not a to-do list. Okay? A plan is exactly what you define as success, what steps are going to be needed for success. Now, as you age, as you get older, as your life situation changes, so will that plan. But this is a plan. I look at my plan every single morning.
Because you said that, I just want to make this real, because I actually could show you on my phone. I have a plan, but what does yours look like? Do you mind just,
Sure,
not going into too much detail, but just maybe make it a little real for people that are listening.
I've got a 3-page plan. The beginning is the steps what I should do every single morning, just to reinforce. I know what they are, but just to reinforce it. 2, I have my value system. This is what's important to me. Friends, family, treating people fairly, treating people with dignity. My values, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
Mine, not yours, mine.
Yep.
Okay. I then have a list of items as to what I should be thankful for.
Gratitude.
Okay. Yeah, just, I have enough money to eat. I have a roof above my head. I have good friends. I have good family. I can do things for institutions, charitable institutions that are important to me. Just, I'm not going to forget them, but it's nice to look at every morning, okay? And then I think about a couple of people who've had traumatic accidents, spinal cord injuries. And I think about them before I go to bed, and I think about them when I wake up. And I say to myself, you've got it pretty good, Frank, regardless of what's going on in your life.
Right.
Okay? And then I have certain goals I want to attain. And those goals are in different categories. I've got physical fitness goals. I've got career goals. Mm-hmm. I've got financial goals. Okay? It's not real detail. This whole thing is only about 3 pages. I get through it in 3 minutes. Okay? And then I read through my 7 pages of quotes. The quotes that are important in my life. Okay? That's my plan. Now, that plan changes.
Right.
It changes. Maybe I meet one of my physical fitness goals a lot quicker than I thought I change it.
But what's fascinating, and I appreciate you sharing that, because most people think of goals in the context of this podcast and the way we talk about these as career goals. And what I hear from you is these are actually very broad, probably family, friends,
You
health.
haven't been listening to me. These are the activities I want to be successful in.
Well, I'm listening to you. Trust me. I'm going to show you my plan, which is on my phone. So
yes.
Yeah.
Any activity that's important to me is on that list.
Right. But I think that's important for people to think about, because it's hard to live this dual life that many people do.
And if you read it every day, there's a reason you read it every day.
Right.
It reinforces
right.
just reinforces what's important in your life. Okay? So number 1 is passion. Number 2 is a plan. 3 is focus. When you're doing an activity that you want to be 100% successful in, you have to be 100% focused. Let me give you an example. Okay? You make the decision that you manage 100 people.
Yep.
And it's very important to you that your people see you as just outstanding in human resources. Okay? That's important to you. You want to be successful in that area. One of your people come up to you and said, "Gee, Mike, you got 15 minutes this afternoon? I'd like to get together with you." You say, "Sure. Come down to my office, 3 o'clock. Got plenty of time for you." Okay. Person comes to your office at 3 o'clock. For the next 15 or 30 minutes, however long you spend with that person, the most important thing in your life is that person. Okay?
Yep.
Regardless of how trivial their problem will be. And believe me, it'll be trivial. But it won't be trivial to them. Okay? What does that mean? It means your phone is off. You're not checking text messages. Your computer's off. You're not checking email. There's nothing on your desk. You're not checking your to-do list. You're not thinking about dinner with your wife tonight. You're 100% focused on that individual. Because if you are the bit distracted, that person will see it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You may not think they see it, but they will see it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So
Well, how many times have you gone into people's offices where their assistant comes in, or they're checking their phone, or they're, no, I agree with you. It's about.
Tell me something. When you meet with a CEO, do you got your phone on?
No.
Okay. Are you checking emails?
No.
You checking your to-do list?
No.
Of course not. Okay. Well, every person that wants to see you is that CEO.
Right.
Okay. So 1, passion. 2, focus, plan. 3, focus. 4, discipline. Because some days the passion's not there. Okay. I'd say passion and discipline are somewhat interrelated antagonistically. Meaning if you need discipline 80% of the time, you don't have passion.
Right.
Okay. If you have passion 80% of the time, I'd probably even go 90, and you need discipline 10%, that'll work. Okay. But there are some times when you're going to need discipline. Okay. And here's the example I give people. I do not believe I can pay you enough money to be miserable for the rest of your life. Okay. I can pay you enough money to be miserable for a year or 2.
Right.
Okay. But probably not for the rest of your life. Okay. Because that would mean that at 100% of the time you have to be disciplined. And you can't be disciplined 100% of the time. You got to have passion about what you're doing. Now, look, there are exceptions to everything. You know, you come over on a boat, you don't speak English, you want to get your kids educated, you work at a job where you're miserable, you work in the mines, I get it, okay? I'm not talking about that, right? I'm talking about 80% of the population.
Right.
Okay. 5.
Can I ask you before you go
Yeah.
on, how, can you make discipline, how have you been able to bring discipline into your life? Do you have an example of maybe something that you've done, whether it's personal or professional, just to make it real?
No, I never, when I was younger, I never realized what my 2 greatest strengths were. Just didn't know. But they were evident when I look back throughout
Right.
my life. And my 2 greatest strengths is I have a very high capacity to work.
Right.
And 2, I may be the most disciplined person in the world. Okay. Now, I'm exaggerating, I think. Now, the problem is you find out that sometimes those kind of strengths now become your weaknesses. Sometimes
right.
you're too disciplined. Sometimes you work too much, okay, and you're ineffective. You know, I remember reading a story about a CEO who said that they worked 100 and something hours a week. Well, you may have been in the office 100 and something hours a week, but I can guarantee you're not working.
Right.
Okay, you're not. You're fighting sleep. You know, after that, it's an ego contest. Who's spending the most time in the office? You know, that's complete garbage.
Right.
Okay. Last, and for some people maybe most important, is the ability to overcome adversity. Okay. As you walk down a road, and it's a road that nobody else has ever walked down before, you're eventually going to hit a wall. Okay. And when you hit that wall, your nose gets bloody, your eye gets swollen, and you're going to want to do 1 or 2 things. You want to turn around and just walk back Now, that road isn't dangerous anymore because you already walked down, and that's fine. You want to walk back, that's fine.
Right.
Or you take 3 steps to the left or 3 steps to the right and go down another road that no one has ever gone down before. And you will find that the people who tend to attain their success are those who can deal with adversity.
What's interesting is it's in many respects the inspiration behind this podcast. Resilience.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, that's right.
I love it that
That's right.
was your fifth.
I never thought about that. You're right. Resilience and adversity, the same thing.
I love those. So this is actually probably one of my favorite topics, although maybe for the Resilience podcast it may not feel as apparent, but I think it is the fact that, when I think of you, kind of that whole notion of wellness, well-being comes to the top of my mind. And I would say in the context of, professional services or the work that you've done, why has it been so important to your success?
Why has what been so important?
Well-being, taking care of yourself.
I'm hesitating because it has always been a very important part of my life, arguably. One could say, outside of, the usual God family, et cetera, the most important part of my life. It just developed that way. There was no conscious decision. It's always been an important part of my life. It has always kept me grounded. It's maintained that discipline. It's kept me out of trouble when I was younger.
Right.
Kept me out of trouble when I was older because I had to get up early in the morning and I couldn't stay out late at night.
Goes back to that discipline thing.
Yeah.
It's
even more than that. More than that. I realized very quickly when I started my career with Deloitte that if I wanted to maintain my devotion to physical fitness, that I had to figure out a way that Deloitte was not going to interfere with that activity. And so what I realized was in order for me to maintain the activities that were important in my life and still attempt to have a successful career, I had to do these very early in the morning. And so very early in my career with Deloitte, I started my physical activities and getting up at a time when
What time would you wake up?
3:30.
Okay, 4:30. I'm a 4:30
And
to 5 guy.
I still do it, by the way. I still do it. I found out that I get more done before 9 a.m., even when I was full-time with Deloitte, than I did after 9 a.m.
Interesting. So you also talked about, and I don't even know what the answer to, I don't think you ever gave me the answer. When we were trading emails once, you said, I have an afternoon routine that helps me get through the day. What is that?
Because I get up so early in the morning.
Yeah, so it's actually nighttime for most people. But
and I started this when I was in my 20s. So,
Yeah.
Anyone out there was saying, well, yeah, Frank's old now, so he's got to take a nap in the afternoon. I started in my 20s, and it's not a nap. What I do, some people would call it meditation, although I don't.
Yeah.
Okay. What I started doing is around 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the afternoon. I would take about 15 or 20 minutes, and I'd sit in a comfortable chair in an office, no distractions, and I go to what I call nothing. I try to get my mind completely blank. And that's not an easy thing to do, okay?
not especially at 2:30 in the afternoon.
Well, at any time,
Yeah.
And I had to work at it for a while. But it's like anything else. First time you play chess, you're not a great chess player.
Right.
You got to work at it. First time you walked as a child, you weren't very successful. You got to work at it. People try things once or twice and said, nah, that doesn't work for me. I'd say, well, what are you really good at? So, well, I'm a great piano player. I said, how good a piano player the first or second time you tried it? Okay,
Right.
you got to work at it.
Absolutely.
Okay? And I did. And I got to the point where my mind could be completely blank. Okay? And I felt refreshed. But then I took it another step. What I did is I got completely blank, and then this is going to sound strange, I took my mind and I separated it from my body. And I looked at myself outside of my body, and I tried to analyze problems I was having as a third person. And I got pretty good at it.
So your routine was it to clear your mind and then go to that place?
Yes, you have to clear your mind first.
Right.
I get my mind to nothingness. And then I pull my mind out of my body. This sounds weird, but
I think you're a closet meditator. Right. You may not want to call it meditation, but that sounds like.
and then I'd look down at myself.
Yeah.
And I analyze any particular problems I had, and I believed I was able to do that as a third party rather than being emotionally involved.
Right.
Meaning, I could separate myself emotionally and make a decision that lacked emotion in a situation where emotion was high.
Right.
I don't know if I communicated that effectively.
No, I know exactly.
Okay.
Well, so
Yeah.
so what's interesting that you talk about, I think this is how the exchange started, is every morning after I work out, and for some reason it's right after I work out, I do a 20-minute meditation. Is very similar to what you say. And what astounds me is when I don't do it, is how there's so many things that I make up in my mind, honestly, that just aren't reality. Like, well, what's somebody going to think? Or what if this goes wrong? And there's no reality to it. And it's crazy what our minds do. And so if you can begin to take control of your mind, it actually can make you much more effective, which it sounds like.
What do you think you were worrying about a year ago today?
Something that I don't remember today. My
you have no idea.
I have no idea.
No idea.
Right. That's yeah. Who knows what? Yeah, exactly.
Somebody once said, and I don't know if this is a direct quote, that 98% of the things you worry about never come to fruition.
Oh, I think that's my point. That's exactly my point. So let me ask you a question. I'm going to go through a couple rapid questions. What one piece of advice? So if you have some kid that's just coming into the work world, what one piece of advice would you have for them? And only one.
You have to love the brand of the company you're working for.
Wow. That's a great answer. The title, and we put a lot of thought into this, of the podcast is resilience. What is an attribute or a couple attributes of a resilient leader? And I think just going back to your 5 elements, yours was adversity. So you've given a lot of thought to this, but what do you think are the attributes of a resilient leader?
Well, if you're asking me for one attribute, it's difficult, but I would, if you truly believe in something and you truly believe it's the right direction, you have to be relentless in pursuit of that direction. Absolutely relentless.
Irrespective of what others believe.
Absolutely. Because when you show people that you're relentless, they're going to know you're serious. And if they had any thoughts before about stopping you, they weren't going to do that. Now, your personality has to meet that. But some of the greatest leaders I've seen, they may not agree with what I'm going to conclude, got there because they were relentless.
Is there one person that stands out more than any in your mind? I know that's kind of an unfair question.
It's an unfair question, but it's your podcast.
That's right.
And I'd say yes, and I would say Bill Perret. Okay. Now, Bill has all the other attributes, but in my opinion, what got him to where he got to, which he was the global CEO.
Right.
Okay. He was relentless. He picked out a goal. He truly believed it, and would let nobody and nothing get in his way of accomplishing it. Maybe hit a roadblock every so often. Maybe he had to take a couple steps back. But as long as he truly believed that was the right answer, he pursued it.
What a great way to end it. Frank, thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Resilient, a Deloitte podcast produced by our friends at Rivet Radio. So you're already listening to this, so you probably know where to go to get the Resilient podcast. But in case you've forgotten, you can find us at Deloitte.com or even visiting your favorite podcatcher. I'm talking about places like iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and even Spotify. Spotify is sending us so many listeners, which is awesome. And when you go there, just put keyword in resilient. I also encourage you to check out some of our previous episodes. We've had so many incredible conversations with CEOs, board members, and leaders, even leaders outside of the business world. And, I actually went to iTunes the other day, and I was checking out our library of all the interviews that we've done to date. And you know what? I really wanted to stop and thank every one of the guests that have come on. I'm blown away by the type of folks that we're getting on and the companies. It's just incredible. Folks like Eric Pillmore at Tyco. My second interview, I remember doing it in a park in Charlotte, North Carolina, or Paul Raines at GameStop. My kids were so jealous. Or my good friend Jackie Rice from Target, or the general counsel from GE, Alex Dmitriev. And, this is just a small sample, but I got to tell you, I'm the luckiest person at Deloitte, being able to sit down with these individuals and really ask them any question that I want. It has been really the highlight of my career. And I'll tell you, if you're enjoying these conversations as much as I am, I would encourage you just to share them with your work colleagues, family, friends, anybody you think would get value out of this. And also, this is a second ask. I would be unbelievably grateful if you could just spend 1 minute providing a rating. Ratings play really a large role in how much the podcast gets promoted in places such as iTunes and other places. So if you do me that favor, I would be most appreciative. Also, like I said before, I'm getting a lot of engagement online, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you have any comments or recommendations for future guests, hit me up. I respond to every message. My profile is under Michael Kearney, and the last name spelled Kearney.